So I love making ornaments that are tailor-made for the specific person I'm giving them to. So this ornament I am making for my friend who is a chicken lover. This adorable napkin I did get on Amazon, so I will leave a link for it down in my description box below. To start out, I am going to take this napkin and remove the back 2 layers. So now that we're left with the pretty layer of the napkin, I am going to take my ornament and place the napkin on top. And then I'm just going to move the napkin around until I can position the right chicken that I would like on the front of this ornament. Now I remove my napkin and I'm going to prep my ornament. To start out, I am going to be using my matte Mod Podge and paint a nice coat of Mod Podge over the top of the ceramic disc. And while that Mod Podge is drying, I'm grabbing my scissors and I'm going to cut out the chicken that I decided I wanted on the front of my ornament. Now I'm going to roughly cut around the chicken and give myself a lot of extra space because that way we can position the chicken exactly how we want again onto that ornament, and we'll be able to remove the excess napkin once everything is adhered. And since I want both sides of the ornament to have something on it, I did cut another piece of the napkin out for the back side. Next, we're just going to layer our napkin right on top of the ornament. Then I grab a piece of parchment paper and layer that right on top. And using my heat press, I'm going to iron that napkin right onto the ornament. If you don't have a heat press, a hot iron would work just fine. Then remove the parchment paper and flip our ornament over, and we're going to do the same steps on the other side. We're going to take our Mod Podge and paint a nice coat of Mod Podge on the back side of our ornament. Once that has dried, we'll go ahead and add our napkin to the top, layer a piece of parchment paper, and iron that on. Now we remove the parchment paper, and both sides of our ornament have this beautiful napkin on either side. Now we just need to remove the excess paper. And to do this, I'm going to grab my zip sander, and this is just a little finger sander that I'm going to sand the edges of the ornament and remove those pieces of napkin. Now, before moving on to our next step, I do want to seal our napkin in. So I'm using my Mod Podge, and I'm going to do a coat of Mod Podge on both sides of this little ornament. And now that our ornament has been sealed in, I grabbed my Martha Stewart Rose Copper paint, and I love this paint. It's very warm, but has just enough of a shimmer that gives it just a little sparkle. And I'm going to take that paint and I'm going to paint the perimeter of my ornament using a small paintbrush. I did do 2 coats just to make sure I had a nice coverage around the perimeter. Now, once our paint has completely dried, I did come back in with my little Cricut tool here, and I'm just going to poke the hole back into our ornament so we have a nice way of hanging it. And for our final touches, I'm using just this really thin brown ribbon to hang our ornament. And once I have our hanger made, I did come back in and added a small little bow to the side where our little chicken is. And this is the same ribbon from the hanger, so it's very tiny. And then we'll flip this ornament over because we need to make sure the back looks just as pretty. And I'm going to add a vintage lace bow to the back on the side of the flowers. And I absolutely love how this ornament turns out. Both sides of this ornament are so beautiful, and you could display either side prominently on your Christmas tree. I just love this. This is so great for that special person that loves chickens. Let me know which side you like better. Do you like the chicken side or the flowers or the combination of them both? Let's make some canvas ornaments. These are a great beginner-friendly decoupage craft that you can make using square canvases. I found mine at Walmart, and you can pick any Christmas napkin that you like. Mine I found on Amazon. Let's start out by removing the back 2 layers from our napkins. To do this, I just flip my napkins over, grab a piece of painter's tape, and then remove those back layers. And now that our napkins are prepped, let's move back over to our little canvases. I'm going to start out by using some Mod Podge. I like using matte Mod Podge on my canvases. I feel like it gives it more of a painting look to me, and it doesn't have that extra gloss to it. And then I'm going to just go ahead and paint a nice coat of that Mod Podge over the top of both of these little canvases. We're going to let these dry completely. Next, I'm going to take my napkin that I prepped earlier, and we're going to lay that over the top of our canvas. I decided to go kind of like on a diagonal on these so they look more like a diamond, but you can do it however you'd like. Once you're satisfied with the placement of the napkin over the top of the dried Mod Podge, we're going to take a piece of parchment paper and lay that over the top. This is called the iron-on method. So you're just ironing the napkin onto the Mod Podge, which activates the Mod Podge, so that way it will remelt everything and everything will stick into place. The nice part about this is it guarantees no wrinkles onto your piece. Next, we're going to go ahead and do a sealing coat of Mod Podge right over the top of this napkin. And then we'll repeat these same steps for our other ornament. We'll place the piece of napkin right over the top of our canvas. And then we're going to go ahead and put a piece of parchment paper right over the top of the napkin. Using our iron, we'll go ahead and use the iron-on method and iron that napkin into place. Once everything has been adhered to, we will take that Mod Podge again and do a sealing coat. Now, once that has dried, we're going to flip over our ornament. I'm going to leave the napkin on there for now the way it is, so it'll be easier for us to paint so we don't get any of the paint on the front of our ornament and we're only getting it on the back side. So I'm starting out with this creme coat white metallic paint, and I'm doing this on the ornament that is the little tree, and this will just give a nice little glossy finish around the outside edge of our ornament. And for our Joy ornament, I'm going to be using this metallic paint from Martha Stewart, and this is a rose gold color. And I'm going to add that along the back side and around the perimeter of this ornament. Now, once all of that paint has dried, I'm going to grab my zip sander. If you don't have a zip sander, you can use a sanding block or a piece of sandpaper or even an emery board. And we're going to use that, and we're sanding down in a downward motion, and we're going to remove all of the excess napkin from our ornament. And on the gold ornament, I did end up having to go back and just do a little bit of touch-up paint, just to make sure everything was nice and sparkly. And now we're going to repeat these same steps on our other ornament. We'll use our little sanding block here, and we'll go ahead and sand in a downward motion, remove all of that extra paper until we are satisfied with our ornament. Now for the back of our ornament, I'm going to take this little piece of fabric that I got from Crafter Squares at Dollar Tree, and I'm just going to cut out some squares to fill in on the back side of our ornament just to give it a finishing touch. To attach the fabric, I'm going to be using my Mod Podge, and I'm just going to paint some Mod Podge on the back side of the ornament, and then I'm going to lay that piece of fabric over the top and let that dry. And I feel like this just gives a finishing touch to the ornament. It's completely optional and up to you if you'd like to do this. And I just repeat the same step on my other ornament as well. And now to attach a hook to each one of these ornaments, I'm just going to be using this little eye hook here that I found on Amazon. I'll link them down below in my description box. And I'm using E6000 to attach it. And so I'm just going to add a little E6000 to the top corner of my ornament. I'll add my little eye hook, and then I'm going to use my little clips from Dollar Tree just to hold it into place. If you don't have those, you can just hold that there for a few minutes until it is adhered. So to see that again on the other ornament, we're just going to flip the ornament over. We're going to add our E6000 to the very top, add the eye hook, and then attach with a clip. Now all that's left to do is we remove the clip, and then we're going to add a beautiful green ribbon to both of these ornaments. And wow! These ornaments turned out amazing. These are stunning little ornaments that are so easy and fun to make. And like I said earlier, these are definitely a beginner-friendly craft. It is such a fun way to learn how to use decoupage, and this will be a great beginner decoupage craft if you're interested. So walking through the dollar store, I saw these adorable candle holders, and I thought, these I can definitely craft with. So for this craft, I'm going to be using the white and silver little flower here, and we're going to make an adorable poinsettia ornament. So to start out, we need to have a way to hang our ornament. So I am taking this little bail here, and I'm going to use just a little bead of this Fix All super glue from Dollar Tree to attach it to the back side. Now once that has completely dried, I'm going to grab a small piece of floral foam. I'm going to cut it in a piece to fit inside of this little candle holder. And to attach this inside, we will use a little bit of hot glue to make sure everything stays into place. And when you're adding this floral foam in, you want it to be almost flush with the candle holder. Now I'm going to grab some Luxe Metallic White Paint from Delta Creative, and we're going to just paint that over the top of the floral foam so it blends in with our piece. Now I'm going to grab this pick that I had in my stash of these sparkly berries, and I believe I got this from the Dollar Tree. And I'm going to start pulling apart some of these berries off of this pick. And then what we'll do here is we're going to take some hot glue and start adding them over our floral foam. Now, once you're satisfied with all of those little silver balls in the center of our flower, I'm going to flip this back over. And using some sheer ribbon, I'm going to make a nice little hanger for our ornament. And now our quick and easy little ornament is complete. This ornament turned out stunning, and it's so easy to make. I am so happy that I was able to transform this candle holder into a beautiful piece, and I can't wait to make a few more to match. Leave a comment down below and let me know what your Christmas tree theme is for this year. I would love to get some ideas of what you guys like on your tree so that I can craft something that you would like to see. Here's a quick and easy way to elevate those wood ornaments from the Dollar Tree. Let's start out by taping down our little ornament to a paintable surface. Then I'm going to grab my Apple Barrel Nutmeg Brown paint. I'm going to do a nice coat of paint on both sides of this ornament. Now to get the color brown that I wanted, I did do 2 coats of paint on both sides. Now, once everything has dried, I did grab one of these silk screens that I had in my stash, and these are available on Amazon, and I will put a link for it in my description box below. So I'm just going to lay this silk screen over the top of our ornament. Now, using my chalk paste from Redesign in Vintage Lace, I'm going to squeegee this on top of our ornament. If you haven't done this before, the chalk paste is a lot thicker of a paint. And so you use a squeegee instead of a brush because then you're able to kind of control where the paint is going a little bit easier. This works really well when you're using these silk screens or even just regular stencils. And while everything is still wet, you're going to go ahead and remove that silk screen from our ornament. And I'm just going to pull this off really gently. Then I'm going to take this to a sink and wash it with some soapy warm water. And once everything has dried on our ornament, we'll go ahead and repeat this on the other side. Now, once our ornament has completely dried, I'm going to take this little vintage bow that I made out of some lace, and I'm going to add that to the top of our ornament using some hot glue. And for our hanger, I'm going to be using this cream satin ribbon. And now our vintage gingerbread themed ornament is ready to hang. I just love how this turns out. This is such an easy craft and totally elevates those little ornaments from the Dollar Tree. Let's grab your favorite napkin and some wood star cutouts, and let's make some adorable ornaments for Christmas. So this little napkin here I did find at Home Goods, and I absolutely fell in love with it. The vintage vibe on this is amazing. So to prep our napkin, I used a little piece of painter's tape to help me remove the back 2 layers of this napkin. Now I'm going to grab my Mod Podge, and I am going to paint a nice coat of Mod Podge over the top of these 3-star cutouts. Now, once that Mod Podge has completely dried, I did grab my napkin and I'm going to cut out a small square to fit over the top of each one of these stars. We do want it to overhang just a little bit. Next, I'm going to lay a piece of parchment paper over the top of all 3 of these stars, and using my heat press, or you could use an iron on the low setting, go ahead and iron on these napkins. This is going to warm up the Mod Podge so that everything will adhere. Now, grabbing my little zip sander, I'm just going to go ahead and sand off any of the excess napkins. If you don't have one of these finger sanders, you can use a sanding block or even an emery board. And once you have all 3 of these stars done, we're going to go ahead and flip them over and repeat these same steps. We're going to add our Mod Podge, let that dry, then go ahead and add our napkins. Now we'll go ahead and lay our piece of parchment paper right over the top and iron those on. Once that is complete, we'll just go ahead and sand off all the excess napkins. And now that we have those 3 stars complete, I did grab 3 little stars that I had in my stash from Dollar Tree last year. And I'm just going to do a quick coat of my chalk paint from Waverly in the color Plaster. And then I'm going to repeat the same steps that we did with the bigger stars and just do a coat of Mod Podge, iron on my napkin, and then sand everything down. We're only doing the front sides of these little stars. Now, once we have all of these stars prepped, I took my Rust-Oleum matte clear enamel and I laid these stars out and took them outside. Next, I just go ahead and I spray a nice clear coat over the top of all of these stars. And once everything was dried, I did flip over the bigger stars and I did the back side on those as well. Now let's go ahead and put everything together. I have these bales here and I got these on Amazon and you can use them for a lot of different things. Here's a quick close-up so you can see what they look like. And I'll put a link for them down in my description box below. So to attach these, I'm using E6000 glue on one of the tips of the stars. And then I'm just going to lay these little bales down on top and let them dry. And what I love about using these bales is it makes the ornament look so high-end. It's such a wonderful way to add a hanger to these pieces. And once this has dried, I'm going to flip these little stars over and we're going to grab some hot glue and hot glue those little stars right to the center of our ornament. Now let's go ahead and add our hanger. I'm using the satin ribbon in cream and it's about 1/4 inch in width. And I'm just going to go ahead and add that to our little bale and tie a knot. And once we have all of our hangers added, I decided that I would like to add a little satin bow to each one of these. This, of course, is completely optional. I just really like having bows on my little ornaments. To attach, I did just use a little bead of hot glue at the tip of each one of the stars. And now our trio set of stars is ready to hang. I just love how these turned out. They have such a fun vintage vibe, but a different look that you would normally not see on a wood ornament. What do you think about these cute little stars? Let me know in the comments below. And if you're enjoying this content, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. Thank you. This is a great decoupage craft night ornament that you can do with your friends or on your own. Let's start out with this adorable little gnome napkin. Now you can use whatever napkin you'd like. I just really liked how this gnome looked. Then I grabbed some of these cute little canvases from the Dollar Tree in the Crafter Square section. To start out, let's prep our napkin. To do this, we're going to open up our napkin and we're going to remove the back 2 layers of this napkin. Now for this ornament, we're only going to need one of these little gnomes, so we're just going to cut 1 quadrant of the napkin out. Now let's go ahead and set our little gnome aside, and I grabbed a small piece of felt. Now let's take our canvas, and I'm going to put that canvas on top of the felt, and we're going to trace the canvas onto the felt. Then we're going to cut out that piece of felt. Next, I found a piece of ribbon that matches the napkin, and this is just a red ribbon with a white stripe in it, and I'm just going to use this as a hanger. And what I want to do here is I really want to give this a polished look. So I'm going to flip over my canvas and I'm going to start out by adding the ribbon first as a hanger for our ornament. And to do this, I'm going to add a little bit of Titebond quick and thick glue. I'm going to fold our ribbon and I'm going to put it right on top of each other, kind of like an awareness bow. And I'm just going to lay that there. And then to make sure everything stays into place, I'm going to take my staple gun and add a staple or 2 just to make sure this is going to stay where it's at and hang very nice. Now, once that's done, I'm going to take that piece of felt and we're going to cover the hanger and the back of this little canvas. And to secure the felt, I'm just going to be using my Titebond quick and thick glue. You could probably use hot glue for this as well if you'd like. Now, once our backing is complete, we're going to flip this over and I grab my Mod Podge in matte. Next, I'm going to go ahead and paint my Mod Podge over the entire canvas. Now, while the Mod Podge is still wet, I'm going to grab that Gnome napkin and we're going to lay that over the top of our canvas very lightly. Next, I'm going to grab some cling wrap and I'm going to take a layer of that cling wrap and I'm going to layer that on top of the napkin. And using my little roller here, I'm going to roll my piece into place. Now this is going to take out any of the wrinkles, so it'll look really nice and polished on our piece. Then we're going to immediately remove that cling wrap and let everything dry. Now to seal our piece in, I'm going to take that same Mod Podge we used earlier, and we're going to go ahead and just paint a nice thin coat over the top of our piece. Now if you go in different directions like I am here, it'll make it look like you have some brush strokes into your ornament and makes it look like you hand painted this little gnome onto your canvas. Now, once your piece has dried, I come back in with my little zip sander. A sandy block would also work fine. And I'm just going to sand around the perimeter of our ornament. And this is going to remove all of that excess napkin and give us a nice smooth look. And since this napkin was more of an off-white in color, I did grab my plaster color paint and I did a little bit of paint around the perimeter of my piece, just so that the canvas on the outside blended in better with my napkin. And now for our final touch, I'm going to add a small little red bow to the top of our ornament. And now our beautiful little decoupage piece is complete. I just love how this gnome turns out. And I would love to hear from you. What do you think of this little gnome? Let me know in the comments below. These wood ornaments are a staple at the Dollar Tree. I want to make something a little bit different that I don't think you may have seen before. So with these ornaments, I'm going to start out by putting them onto a paintable surface. And just to get started, we are going to paint both sides with green and gold paint. This is just to give us a nice background to our piece. I am going to paint the back sides of these as well because I like to have my ornaments finished on both sides. And now that we have completed the painting on both sides of these ornaments, I'm going to take this Diamond Dot adhesive glue. And what we're doing here with this adhesive is you take the adhesive and you just paint that on one side of these ornaments. Now this adhesive is very thin, so what I'm doing is I put that in a little container to use to paint this on, and I'm going to try to do a nice thick coat of this adhesive over the top of my ornaments. Now what you'll want to do is let this dry completely so that all of the white from the glue kind of looks clear, and it'll still be tacky, but it's gonna be a clear kind of sheen look to your ornament. And this does dry fairly quickly. It only took about 15 minutes. Next, I'm going to grab some of my diamond dots and I'm using some green and some gold, and I'll add some white and some red in here in a little bit as well. And I'm just pouring my diamond dots into my little trays, and I'm going to be using my diamond dot applicator to add these to my ornaments. I'll link all of this stuff in my description box below, but if you've ever done a diamond dot painting, you can get these at the craft stores in different places. You get all of these pieces in that kit. So there's some of the things you may already have if you've kept any of those after you've done one of those paintings. And if you're new to diamond dots, these are just small little plastic diamond looking pieces that come in so many different colors. And you use this pen here, and it has like a hollow center inside, which allows you to put those diamonds onto a piece. Most of the time you're going to see these in kits where it's like a paint by number situation. But what I like about this adhesive is it allows you to take that adhesive and add it to anything that you'd like so that you can diamond dot it the way you would like to. And this is one of those relaxing crafts that you can do in the evenings when you're trying to de-stress for the day. Now, the other nice thing about these is that you can take a small piece of plastic and you can put that over the top of the adhesive and then leave this and come back to it the next day. So you don't have to finish this right away. This is something that you can do over a period of time, or you can sit down and do this in a sitting. Now, once you do get all of your diamond dots added, you can come in with this dots guard, and this is a sealer for your diamond dots. So what I like about this is it goes on really nice and thin, and it seals all of your diamond dots in, and it doesn't take away from the color. It does dry clear, and it still has that sparkle that the diamond dots have. So I'm just going to go ahead and just apply this to both of my little ornaments here. And then I'm going to let this dry for about an hour. Now here is what both sides of our ornament looks like. I just like that the back is finished as well, so that way if you do see it on your tree, it doesn't look funny. Now let's go ahead and add a small ribbon to the top of each one of these ornaments to give it a nice little hanger. Now, once we have our hanger made, I did think that I needed a little bit extra, so I added a small bow to the top of each one of these ornaments. And now our little diamond dot ornaments are ready to hang. I just love how beautiful these turned out. I think these are an adorable addition to any tree and such a fun craft you can do during the stressful holiday season to help de-stress. This craft, we're going to start out with this tag from Dollar General. And I have to give a quick shout out to my friend Robin from Crafts Unleashed. She sent me this beautiful box of different items from Dollar General since I don't have them up here in the Pacific Northwest. So thank you, Robin, for sending this to me. I hope you like what I create. So all I'm doing here is I grab my sip sander and I sanded off all of that glitter and paint. Next, I'm just going to go ahead and remove the tag and those little beads that are right there. I am going to leave that jute twine hanger. Next, I grab my Waverly chalk paint in the color plaster, and we're going to go ahead and give a nice coat of paint over the top of this tag. And earlier, I had printed out a piece of sheet music that is for Frosty the Snowman. And I'm going to go ahead and lay this tag right over the top of that sheet music. I still want to see the title up at the top that says Frosty the Snowman. So I'm going to make sure I trace the tag so that I can keep that on my tag. We just have to cut that tag shape out of our sheet music. Now next, we're going to tea stain our little piece of sheet music. And I did learn this technique from Sammy over at Unicorn Destin Designs. And I'm going to give her a shout out down in my description box. So please go check her out. She does some amazing farmhouse crafts. This technique is super simple. All you do is you wet down your tea bag, and then you're just going to go ahead and paint that tea right onto whatever you're trying to stain. Now, once you are done staining your piece, and while everything is still wet, I'm going to go around the outside edge, and I'm just going to tear the paper so that it gives a nice rough edged look. Now, while we have a moment, so now that we have all of our paper torn, we need to dry this piece of sheet music. So you could put this in the oven and bake it for 10 minutes at the lowest setting at like 250, 175, 275, whatever your lowest setting is on your oven. However, I was impatient and I just grabbed my heat tool this time and I just dried it. And it worked just fine. So that also works as well. Now let's go back to our tag. We are going to go ahead and grab our Waverly chalk paint in the color ink. And I am going to just go ahead and paint around the outside edge of this tag. I'm not going to get into the center, just I'm going right around the edge. And I actually later on went back and painted around the frame or the perimeter of this tag with the black ink as well, just so that it had a really nice finished look. Now, while that is drying, I did grab another one of these snowman cutouts. And all I'm doing here is taping this down to a paintable surface and grabbing my Waverly chalk paint in the color plaster, and we're going to give a nice coat of paint over our snowman. And I didn't want to get out wood filler, so I just grabbed my hot glue gun and I filled the hole in on the snowman's tag. And I have baker hands, so I was able to just kind of wipe a little bit of that hot glue off of there. But if you're sensitive to hot stuff, don't do that. Use wood filler or something else. And then I'm just going to go ahead and then paint that over with the Waverly chalk paint in plaster again. Now that the paint is dry, I grab my Mod Podge and I'm going to paint a coat of the Mod Podge over the top of the snowman. And then I'm going to grab my heat tool and help the drying process along. And once our snowman is completely dry, I am going to prep my napkin. And to do this, all I'm going to do is unfold my napkin, and I'm taking a little piece of painter's tape, which will help me remove the bottom layers from the napkin. And this napkin, I think, is only 2-ply. I could not get a 3rd ply off, so that is all I ended up removing. If you like this napkin, I did get this from Home Goods. I always seem to have really good luck finding great napkins there. And what I really liked about this napkin is there was one quadrant of the napkin that was foiled. So I'm going to actually be using that on our snowman. So I just cut that square right out. And then I'm just going to lay that over the top of our snowman. And you can see me here kind of positioning where I want my napkin because I want as much gold on my snowman as I can. Next, I grabbed a little piece of parchment paper, and then I'm using my hot iron. And we're just going to iron that napkin right onto our snowman. Now, all we need to do is remove that piece of parchment paper, and I am going to go ahead and grab my Mod Podge, and I'm just going to seal this in and let that dry before I sand off the edges. After everything has dried, I did use an emery board to sand the edges off, and I found that this was just a little bit easier to sand around all of the little detail pieces of this snowman. And yes, I know this video is going a little bit long on this craft, but I really want to show you all of the steps that I did. And it is 2 sides, so it's almost like 2 crafts in one. So what I did here is I took the tag that we painted earlier and I put it on the back side of this placemat that I've been cutting at for different crafts. And so I just traced it on the back side, and we're going to cut that out. And now we're going to repeat the same steps, but this time we're going to be tracing out our little snowman. So now that we have all of our pieces for our tag, we're going to put all of this together. We're going to start out by grabbing some quick and thick type bond, and I'm going to place that on the back side of this tag. And to make sure everything lays nice and flat, I did grab a paintbrush and I just painted the glue all along the back side of this tag. And then we just placed that piece of the placemat right over the top of this tag. And I wanted to make sure that this adhered really nicely, so I did grab some of my pink clips that I had from the Dollar Tree, and I just placed that along the tag to make sure the glue stuck really nice. And now that that's dry, I'm going to grab my decoupaged little snowman, and I'm just going to do the same thing with the glue. I'm going to use that Titebond glue again, and I'm going to paint that along the backside of my snowman and add him to the tag. Once that is dry, I went ahead and added 2 black beads and a gold bead out of my stash to the twine on the tag. Now here is the back side of the tag, and I just really like how this turns out. I almost like the back side better than the front side, but I want you guys to vote at the end, so we'll let you guys decide. So on the front side of this tag, I am going to grab my Mod Podge. What we're going to do is just paint a nice layer of Mod Podge over the whole entire front side of this tag. And once this is completely dry, we're going to go ahead and lay down that piece of music right on the top of the tag. Next, we're going to layer a piece of parchment paper, and then using our hot iron, we're just going to iron the sheet music right onto the tag, and that glue underneath that Mod Podge is going to warm up and everything is going to adhere. And once that is done, we can go ahead and remove that piece of parchment paper. And now I'm going to grab my Mod Podge again, and I'm going to take that Mod Podge and use it as a sealer on top of this sheet music. And once we have that all layered on top of our sheet music, we let that dry. Now I'm going to grab my Titebond again, and I'm going to take that snowman that we cut out of the placemat, and we're going to go ahead and just do the same technique where we add the Titebond, use a little bit of our paintbrush here, and we're just going to spread that all around. Now we just have to place that right on the center of our tag. And wow, the front of this tag looks amazing as well. I don't know which one's better. I would love for you guys to let me know what you think looks nicer. Would you like tag side 1 or tag side 2? Please vote in the comments below which tag you like better. If you're enjoying this content, don't forget to hit that subscribe button down below. Thank you. For these ornaments, we're starting out with these acrylic discs and then these beautiful napkins that I found on Amazon. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to prep both of these napkins by removing the back 2 layers from the back side. And to do this, I'm using a little piece of painter's tape, and that helps assist removing these layers. Now that we have our napkins prepped, I'm going to go back to that acrylic disc. Now, these discs come with a film on both sides of the disc to protect the acrylic. So we're going to only remove one piece of film while we're starting out this craft. So we'll go ahead and remove the first piece of film, and then we're going to lay that down with it face up so the nicer side is facing up towards you. Next, I grab my Mod Podge in gloss finish, and I'm going to add a layer of Mod Podge to the top of this ornament. Next, I'm going to take a piece of the napkin that we prepped earlier, and I'm going to flip it upside down on top of that Mod Podge. We're just going to lightly lay that down. Next, I'm going to grab my cling wrap, and I'm going to take a small piece of cling wrap, and I'm going to layer that on top of my napkin. Now I'm going to grab my roller, and I'm going to take that roller and just roll the napkin right on top of the acrylic. And once you're satisfied that everything is on there, we'll go ahead and remove that piece of cling wrap and let that dry. Now let's see that one more time. We're going to go ahead and take our piece of acrylic. We'll remove only one of the protective layers. Next, we'll grab our Mod Podge and we'll go ahead and paint one coat of Mod Podge over the top. While it is still wet, we will lay a napkin face down on top of that. With a piece of cling wrap over the top of that napkin, we will then roll it into place and then peel that cling wrap off and let that dry. Now here is what our piece looks like before we've done anything else. You can see that napkin shows right through that acrylic onto the other side. Now to seal our napkin in, I'm going to take more of that Mod Podge and do a light coat over the top of the napkin and let it dry again. And here is what our Joy napkin looks like. We're going to do the same step by sealing that in using our Mod Podge. And once the Mod Podge has completely dried, I'm grabbing my Waverly chalk paint in the color white, and we're going to do a nice coat of white paint over the top of the Mod Podge. And by doing this, you can see that our napkin is going to show much brighter through that acrylic when we flip it over. Now let's repeat that same step on our Joy napkin as well by taking that white Waverly chalk paint, painting it over the top of the Mod Podge and the napkin, and then we'll let that dry. Now I'm going to grab this other Christmas napkin that I had, and I'm going to remove the back 2 layers from this napkin, and we're going to going to use this napkin on the back side of the white paint. So this will give the back of our acrylic ornament a really nice backing. So if you flip the ornament over, it'll almost be like it's two-sided. So to do this, we are going to take our Mod Podge, and this is the glossy finish as well, and I'm going to just paint a coat over the top of the white paint that we painted earlier. Now, while this is still wet, we're going to apply the new napkin over the top of this Mod Podge. This time, we're going to have it face up so you can see the pretty design on the napkin. Next, I'm going to take a piece of cling wrap, layer that over the top, and then we're going to use our roller and roll everything into place. Now we'll set that aside to dry and repeat on our next ornament. So we'll flip our Joy ornament over. We will add our glossy Mod Podge over the top of the paint. Once that is done, we will add our napkin over the top, face up, add some cling wrap, roll the napkin onto our ornament, and then peel the cling wrap off and let this dry. Now, to seal our ornament in, I'm going to be using some Mod Podge acrylic spray, and I take my two ornaments outside and I spray these down using that spray, only on the back side where we've done our decoupage. And I like to seal with this acrylic spray sometimes because I feel like this assures that you will not get any wrinkles on your piece. So now that we've done everything that we have, we can go ahead and remove the excess napkins. I waited to do this step until the very end because I didn't want any of the paint, the Mod Podge, any of that to get onto the acrylic on the outside of the ornament. I feel like this is going to make a nicer finish on the whole perimeter of the ornament. And it just gives you a little bit of buffer so you don't get any paint on the front side at all either. Now here is what our ornament looks like on both sides. Since we did do the decoupage, it did cover the hole there that was going to be to hang our ornament. So I'm just using my little Cricut pokey tool here to just go ahead and reopen that hole. You could also use a skewer or a toothpick, whatever you have that's sharp nearby. Now that that is all done, we're going to go ahead and string a piece of ribbon right through the top of that hole. And then we'll just tie a knot to make a nice little hanger for our ornament. And now don't forget to pull off that final film on the front side of the acrylic so it's all nice and shiny and looks beautiful. And wow, this ornament turned out amazing. Let's go ahead and look at this on our little tree ornament as well. So we will start out using our little zip sander and sand off all of the excess napkins. Now we'll go ahead and just make sure the hole is there for us to hang our ornament. And before I forget, I'm just going to go ahead and remove that film from the front side of this ornament. Now all we need to do is attach a ribbon as a hanger and our ornament is complete. And now here is what our little Christmas tree looks like. I just love how these ornaments turned out. These acrylic discs making ornaments amazing. If you haven't tried them yet, there's a link for them in my description box below. You can do ornaments with these, you can make keychains, all sorts of fun things. I think these ornaments would make the perfect craft for a craft party. And while we're talking about craft parties, if you do like to do them, I have a checklist that I would love to send to you. If you sign up for my newsletter down below in the link, you'll be getting a free checklist for a craft party. You'll also get a beautiful newsletter once a month in your inbox with fun craft tips, giveaways, and more. For this craft, we're starting out with one of those classic wood cutouts from the Dollar Tree. And this is just a cute little snowman. And I'm taping this down to a paintable surface. For this next step, you're going to need a hot glue gun. And I'm just going to fill the hole in at the top of that snowman and just add some little lines or designs to my snowman using the hot glue. Now Now let's grab our Aleene's Tacky Glue, and I'm just gonna put a little bit of glue over the top of the snowman. And once I have a little bit of glue on top of the snowman here, I'm gonna take a paintbrush and just paint that all over. Next, I'm gonna grab some aluminum foil, and this is just the regular aluminum foil. And I'm gonna tear a piece off big enough to cover my snowman. I'm just gonna lightly press that aluminum foil into all the nicks and crannies. Now I grabbed a paintbrush with no paint on it, just a dry paintbrush, and I'm just going to paint the aluminum foil onto my snowman. Now once that is completely dried, I grab my Delta Creative white metallic paint, and I'm just going to do a nice coat of paint over the top of the foil. Now once that is dry, I grab my multi-surface folk art licorice paint, and I'm going to paint the hat on our snowman. And for our carrot nose, I am going to use my Delta Creative metallic gold paint, and I'm going to paint the nose. Now to seal all of this paint in, I'm using my hard coat Mod Podge, and I'm just going to do a light coat over the top of all the paint. And now once everything is nice and dry, I grabbed my zip sander, and I'm going to sand off the excess aluminum foil here. Now, if you don't want to use a zip sander, that is totally fine. A little piece of sandpaper will work. But I've also found that an emery board, especially on detail work like this, works really nice. So just the nail file, and you just go ahead and you just do the same motion in a downward motion and sand off the foil. Moving on to the next step. I found this hanger at the Dollar Tree, and I am going to transform these into some ornaments. So the first thing I want to do is I want to deconstruct this sign. So I'm just using a pair of pliers and a screwdriver to remove the staples off the back side of this sign. Now we're going to go ahead and just take a little bit of water, and I'm going to spray the tops of these signs and put a piece of paper towel over the top to let it all soak in. And then all I'm going to do is I'm going to take a scraping tool and scrape off as much of it that I can. I don't need to scrape all of it off because I am going to be covering it with another material, but I wanted to scrape off enough that the glue would stick nicely and not fall off. And the material we're going to glue onto these ornaments is this sparkly little placemat I found at the Dollar Tree, and I absolutely love crafting with it. It is amazing. I'm just going to take one of these squares, and I'm going to place it on the back side of this placemat, and I want to get the most out of it that I can, so I'm going to put it in a spot where I feel like I can get more pieces cut out. And then I'm just going to trace around the outside and then cut a piece out. And once I get this piece cut out, I do a fit check with my little ornament piece and make sure everything is going to fit nice. Now let's take our square, and I'm going to tape this down to a paintable surface, and we're going to flip this over to where the smooth side is, which would have been the back side of this sign. And I'm taking a little bit of this black satin paint, and I'm just going to coat the back side of this ornament. I am also going to paint around the perimeter of the ornament as well. Next, I grabbed a piece of satin ribbon, and I'm going to measure out a piece about 10 inches in length. And this is a 1/4 inch thick satin ribbon. I'm going to take this ribbon and I'm going to make it into a shape of a fish. And if you see me made ornaments before, this is one of my standard moves for making a hanger. Next, I go ahead and add a little bit of hot glue, and I'm just going to make sure that that adheres to each other. This allows for the hanger to sit flat against your ornament and leaves a nice hanging look when you hang this on your tree. Now I'm just going to glue this to the back corner of the square on the black side of the square. And once that glue has dried, we'll flip this over and we'll go ahead and start decorating the front side of our ornament. Next, we're going to grab our Titebond glue, and I'm just going to add that to the top of my ornament, and I'm going to use a paintbrush to paint that glue onto the top of the ornament. This will allow for the piece of the placemat that we're going to put over the top of it to not have any lumps when we put that down. And I'll just lay that piece of placemat over the top of the glue. And I'm loving how this is turning out. You have that nice black on the back side of the ornament, but then you have this really sparkly part on the front. And it just really makes it look like a polished ornament, something that you might buy at a high-end store. Now I'm going to go ahead and grab that Titebond again and our cute little snowman. And we're going to take a little bit of that Titebond glue, add that to the back of our snowman. And of course, I'm going to use that paintbrush again and paint that glue right onto the snowman so that he is covered completely. Then we're just going to center that snowman right to the front of our ornament. And wow, I just love how this ornament turns out. This looks so high-end and doesn't look like you made it from Dollar Tree items. Let me know what you think in the comments below. This craft is starting out with some wood ornaments from the Dollar Tree and some toilet paper. Yeah, that's right, toilet paper. So what we're going to do with this toilet paper is I'm just going to tear off some of the sheets of the toilet paper and just add them to a little bowl. Once we filled our bowl, I'm taking my Delta Creative Luxe Metallic White Paint, and I'm just going to add that to the top of the toilet paper. And I probably put about a tablespoon and a half in there when I was all done with putting my paint in. Next, I'm going to add a little bit of water, and I'm going to stir this up with a paintbrush until it is to the consistency that I would like. Now, this technique works well with any acrylic paint, so you can use any color that you'd like. I've really been enjoying these Luxe Metallic paints from Delta Creative. They have like a shimmer of sparkle to them, but it's not overpowering, so it's not like a sparkle paint. And it's a creamier white. I'd say it's more of a soft white, and I just really like the look. So once we have our paint to our consistency we would like, I go ahead and tape down one of these ornaments to a paintable surface, and using my paintbrush, I'm just going to spread this paint over the top of the ornament. And this is more of a set down the paint onto it, or like you're spooning it from your paintbrush, and then you're just tapping that down into place. So then everything is nice, and it gives this amazing texture by having that toilet paper in there. And once we complete the first ornament, I'm going to go ahead and repeat this step on my other two ornaments. And I find by taping these ornaments down onto a little piece of cardboard, this makes it a lot easier because this is going to take overnight to dry. So what I'm able to do once I've added this paint to each one of these ornaments is I can just take that piece of cardboard and lift it lightly and move it to somewhere to dry while I'm working on other projects. And while the paint is still wet, I do take my little Cricut tool here, and this is just the pokey tool that you use for weeding, and I'm just going to poke that into the hole where the ornament would be hung from because I want to make sure that the paint doesn't dry and fill that hole in. Now let's go ahead and set these aside for 24 hours to completely dry. So now that everything is dried, I do want to put a few little highlights around the edges of these ornaments. And I'm using my Delta Creative Luxe Metallic Silver and my Folk Art Sugar Metallic Meteorite. And now we're going to just dry brush a little bit of that paint on the outside edges of these ornaments. And now once the paint has dried, I'm taking some black satin ribbon and I'm just going to go ahead and tie some little hangers onto these ornaments. And now that we have our hanger, for our last finishing touch, I'm taking some sheer silver ribbon and making little bows. And I'm just going to hot glue a little bow to the top of our ornament. And now our trio of ornaments is complete, and I just love how these turned out. The toilet paper really elevates these ornaments in a way that you would never expect. So I would love to hear from you guys today. I am from Washington State, so where are you guys watching from? Let me know in the comments below. Dollar Tree carries 3 different types of these wood frames in the Crafter Square section, so these are really fun to play around with. For this one, I am going to take one of these little snowflake ornaments that I had gotten from Dollar Tree a few years back, but you can find similar ones at Dollar Tree, or sometimes you'll find something similar at Walmart in their section where they have multiple smaller ornaments. And for this snowflake, I decided to paint it with my Waverly chalk paint in the color Plaster. And at first, I thought I could just paint over the top of the plaid that's in there. And after trying that for a few minutes, I was not happy with how it was looking. So I ended up stopping and grabbing my Cricut spatula and trying to pry off the top snowflake from the snowflake so that I could get that piece of flannel off of that wood. Once I had everything removed and taken apart, I'm going to go ahead and paint the wood piece with my Delta Creative Silver, and I'm going to paint both sides of that wood snowflake. Once that silver paint has dried, I didn't want to lose that little bit of shimmer that it had, so I'm using my glossy Mod Podge, and I'm going to put a coat of Mod Podge over the top of that silver paint, and then we're going to place the snowflake that we had painted earlier with the plaster color paint, and we're going to just lay that on top of the Mod Podge. Next, I wanted to add an embellishment to the center of my snowflake, and I bought these adorable snowflakes on Amazon, and I think I got like 50 or 100 in a bag, and they were different shapes of snowflakes, but all were painted white, and I believe they're wood. So I'm taking one of these snowflakes and I'm just going to do a quick coat of that silver paint over the top of that snowflake. I'll set that aside to dry. Now I'm going to grab my picture frame that I had from earlier, and we're just going to tape that down to a paintable surface. And I'm using my Waverly chalk paint in the color Moss, and I'm going to do a coat of paint over the top of this frame. Once I have both sides of the frame covered in that moss paint, I take my Waverly white wax, and I'm going to take and put a little bit of that white wax on a lint-free cloth, and I'm just going to rub that around the whole entire frame on both sides, and then we'll set that aside to dry for a little while. Let's go ahead and put everything together. Off camera, I restrung the little ornament using some cotton cord that had a silver ribbon kind of through it. And after I restrung that, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take a little bit of hot glue and put that right in the center of that snowflake and add that silver snowflake we painted earlier. Since you can see both sides of the ornament sometimes on a tree, I like to try to make them look nice on the back side as well. So I am going to hot glue another little snowflake to the back side of this ornament, but this one was just painted white, which gave a nice contrast on the back side of this ornament. Next, we're going to add this ornament to the inside of this frame. And I struggled with this for a few minutes trying to figure out how the best way to hang it so it would hang in the center of this frame. So I'm going to show kind of in slow motion what I am doing here. But I laid both pieces of string around that initial bump on the frame. And then I took that string and I kind of tucked it in between both of those pieces from the back side. And then I figured out where I wanted it to kind of hang at before I tied any knots. And to tie the knot, I separated the 2 strings out that I had fed through the hole originally. And I think I ended up flipping this over a little bit so that I could tie the knot behind the ornament. And once we have that knot where we want it, I went ahead and I weaved the leftover string through the 2 strings that were wrapped around the frame so that it would lay straight when I tied a knot above that to make a hanger. Wow, that was a tongue twister. I hope you guys understood what I'm doing here. But if you didn't, just go ahead and rewatch it once or twice and you'll figure this out. Now, once you're satisfied with your hanger, I am doing one last embellishment on this, and I'm going to add a little bow to the top to cover that tie mark where I put the string. So I'm just going to take a little bit of hot glue and place this pretty bow right on top of that. And wow, this beautiful ornament is ready to hang. I just love how this turns out, and that green is just so pretty. And if you're enjoying this content, please consider hitting that like or subscribe button below. It really helps my channel grow. Thank you.